Hello and welcome to week 13 in personality or psychology of personality. And we have a couple chapters here that really look deeply into sociocultural factors, some of which we can relate to, some of which we have to extrapolate or imagine. And that is, we're going to be looking at the factors of religion and race ethnicity, exemplified in the African perspectives on psychology, chapter 16. So let's look at chapter 15, religious perspectives on personality. And when we think of this, there are people who are religious. There are people who live in societies that are deeply impacted by religion. It would be unfair to say that the United States is not truly and very significantly impacted by its Christian roots. It's in the law, it's in the perspectives, and certainly in the rhetoric that's going on today in the political world. Directly or indirectly, people's faith, whether it's your own or the faith of others, our experience with religion, our positive and negative, our personal search for meaning and spiritual life, all of those factors play a role in some way in our perspectives of our place in the cosmos and in society. So many times how people will approach this, say, I'm not religious, I don't go to church and all that stuff. I want you to expand the idea in terms of looking at what we're trying to get with this particular chapter. Some of you maybe espouse particular faiths, and you can be very almost, you just look at articles of faith, or what does the faith tell you to do? How does that shape your personality? And discussing those kind of things, probably pretty easy approach to that. All of us, however, have value systems and a sense of our place in the world, whether it's a mystery, whether there's a higher power, whether there's nature is Gaia, the goddess of nature, or whether you study Wicca, or whether you are on your own personal spiritual growth path. All of those relate to this discussion. So this doesn't necessarily have to be a comparative religion discussion. It could be a comparative of what's important in my life in the big picture sort of discussion. So I really want to open this up. It's not a discussion to determine what's right and wrong. It's a discussion to talk about how those bigger picture ideas, whether they be encased in a religion or a spiritual path, or maybe simply in your thinking of your place in the universe, how has that shaped who you are? In fact, I would think it would be significant. I would think that each one of us would be able to say, because of these things in my life, these beliefs that I have, or faith that I have, or my understandings of my place in the universe, it guides my choices. It's that higher level moral thinking. If you ever take developmental psych and you encounter the moral development stages, theories that are out there, I can't right off the top of my head. Gilligan is one of them, and Kohlberg is the one that's the most described. Kohlberg's theories of moral development. Gilligan came along and added a feminist perspective that's incredibly instructional and very useful to use them together, those two theories. But there's stages in Kohlberg's theory where we ascribe to a code that's universal, a universal code. So we're kind of looking for that universal code about things that sort of transcend humanity. Now, this is a developmental stage, so Kohlberg said not everybody got up there, but we probably all have a sense of the highest values that are there, that are out there, that transcend opinion, politics, economics, maybe even transcend individuals and move to the collective, or transcend the collective and move to the individual, thinking about those kinds of ways in which we can perceive our world. So the discussion, I want to be open to all of those ideas. We then move into chapter 16. Again, one of the reasons I picked this particular textbook, going into areas that was never a part of my original education in psychology. And we're introduced to African psychology. Now, because of the African diaspora, meaning people were removed from Africa, brought to different parts of the world as part of the slave trade and all this stuff, there is it's actually similar in some ways to the Jewish diaspora from the Christian and Jewish history, removed from their country, brought into slavery all over the world. And then the process, both with Jews and with Africans or people of African descent, of recognizing roots based in a geographical area and the sort of traditional values, norms, and expectations associated with that. And it's been wonderful for me as a multiculturalist to see the richness of these traditions that people are embracing as part of their, their ancestors' culture. In part leading me to, and I've often thought about my own ethnic origin. My ethnic origin is French and Irish. And I've been all over Canada and I've been to France. Haven't been to Ireland yet to kind of look at that and see, what relates to me. And just, it's not as, driven as those who have experienced dysphoria. I mean, the culture was beaten out of them, if not literally. And Native Americans, the same thing. Their culture was actively squelched. So this growing attachment and desire to explore those parts of their cultural being has been a powerful force among blacks in America and worldwide, among Native Americans, among other groups, even modern groups who, let's say, if you looked at LGBT, look, that particular issue, if we want to call it, has very old roots. It has a history. It has a history of conflict, a history of successes, different cultures around the world being accepting or non-accepting and stuff. There's a rich culture in these things, and when we could take our eyes off the immediate and then look back at those rich foundations, I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful to experience those, and that kind of and we were introduced to that in terms of the African perspective in this particular chapter. What I'm going to be asking you to do, like there may be black people in this with African roots in this particular class, I don't know, and certainly your voice is important to understand your particular journey in that. But for all of us, maybe this chapter challenges us to look at our own roots and to see where we've come from. What was our cultural being and how that influences us today. And for some people, it's kind of a reconnection to things that are, again, bigger than ourselves. Maybe it's a connection to some responsibility that we have. I didn't know my ancestors weren't always great, kind of thing, and owning that and making sure that doesn't continue. But just taking a look at our ancestors, even if it's, it's kind of like what people have been doing in terms of looking at their family trees and seeing where they're from, using Ancestry.com and stuff. Which, by the way, if you go to the Colby College Library, the Colby College Library has access to Ancestry for free. And my understanding, there's another instructor at KV that uses that in his class on history and brings people there, and they use that software to search their ancestors and stuff like that. It'd be really fun to actually make an assignment out of that like he does, and have you look at those roots through that tool. Or maybe you've already done that. Maybe you already know that your family came over on the Mayflower, or they were at Ellis Island, or maybe you have Native American roots and this has been your land for millions of years. So, so these kinds of discussions about your roots and what kind of impact they have on you today is the purpose of that. So in a way, we're sort of looking at big picture stuff. So we have the first chapter looking at religion and higher values and, you know, transcending values and whatnot. And now we're looking at ethnic roots, exemplified in the chapter by the African experience. But then all of us can partake in that in terms of looking at our own ancestors and our ethnic aspects, and even looking at today and say what still survives today, what attitudes, what norms, what behaviors, what traditions do I have still surviving today that shape my life and the way I view it. So so cool stuff. So that's what we're discussing, those two discussions this week in this class. We're approaching the end of the class, and I did have a request to do a video on the final project, which is an autoethnography. Now, please look up the word ethnography. It is a term used by anthropologists to describe a deep search into the cultural aspects of someone's life. Usually, it's sort of the key product that anthropologists produce. They produce ethnographies. That is the, you know, psychologists produce research papers, anthropologists produce ethnographies. Auto is like an ethnography on myself, like an autobiography would be self-biography, self-ethnography. So you're going to be looking at the cultural aspects of who you are. So in response to that request, I will be producing another video for this class. I'll be posting it in class. I'll probably put it in the timeline, probably eventually put it in the course book. But going over that assignment, going over the specifics to that, read the instructions, no matter what. Get a handle on that. The video is to enhance the discussion, the instructions, not to replace them. So, and the best source is the rubric that goes into each area that I want you to cover in terms of a self-analysis of the relationship between your cultural factors and your personality. Kind of the cultural twist that I put on this class. And so with that, you can look forward to that video. My plan is to do that later today. It's Monday the 10th. And I will be doing that later today in plenty of time to get this going for you folks to get that assignment done. So have a great week with these two discussions. Be well. The weather is supposed to be fantastic. If you're out at the actual UMA campus, please go out to that walking trail. I have always, when I was working at UMA, I spent a lot of time on that walking trail out by the Civic Center. And please try to get out there or get outside, get some nice nature in you. There was actually a recent article has come out, what I plan to integrate into my course books next year. A very definitive relationship has been identified between symptomology in mental health, mental wellness, and being in nature. Now, intuitively, we've always known that. It's all there. But now the evidence is pretty irrefutable. And I'm going to be looking at that article and seeing, probably making some assignments, get people out in nature. So we'll see. All right, so have a great week. Enjoy the outdoors. Be well, and I'll see you next time.